Welcome to Fear with Christine Spratley. Living like a head in charge, the podcast where Christine says fear, questions everything, and takes bold action. Christine Spratley is a former professional boxer, nanny, and 29-plus year corporate warrior turned founder of HBIC Advisors, where she is a public speaker and coach. She's been saying fear her whole life, many times without even realizing it. So tune in, spread the word, and get ready, because this isn't about aging with grace. It's about aging with mischief, audacity, and having a damn good story to tell.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Fuck Fear with Christine Spratley, living like a head bitch in charge. And today, well, first of all, we're going to do shots really quick. Immunity is up. Joe, you were saying you were craving these?
Yeah.
I've got you addicted to shots now.
Every time we don't do a show, I'm like,
something's
missing.
Is there a 12-step program you need to join now?
Yeah.
All right, here you go. Bottoms up. That had a lot of pepper.
Yeah.
And a lot of ginger, mine did. How about yours?
Yeah. Just chunks of it.
Yeah. Yeah, it wasn't as smooth. Ooh, that's good though. Ooh. If you've looked at the title, it's Bake Your Own Damn Cake and use your own recipe and create your own recipe. A lot of times you've heard me talk about the idea of this podcast being a pantry and having things in it that you can apply in your life or try in your life a little or a lot, and take and add to it and see how it works. And so you're really living and baking your own cake, and you're really taking and mixing up your own brew, your own witch's brew for your life, and seeing how much of this works and how much it doesn't work in your situation. So I was coming across some things the other day, and with a couple of my clients, and one of them was, well, just give me, sometimes in coaching, people go, well, just tell me what to, give me that advice, or tell me what to do, or give me these things. And the other thing that happens in coaching sometimes is we'll get to where they go, oh, this is what's really going on, and this is what I need to do. And I'll be like, yeah. And they'll be like, you knew that? I was like, well, I thought. And they're like, well, why didn't you tell me? And again, I was like, I always say it's better for you to know than me to know. It's better for you to find it out than me to know. And that doesn't mean that I don't, give people feedback and things of that nature. But again, it's about the journey that they do. And it's about the journey that I do. So this segment is about, you can't download somebody else's formula for fulfillment, whether it be small or big. In all four areas, you can't download the exact script and say, boom, 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 boom. Because you are a unique and amazing person. You have your own experiences. You have your own interpretations of things. You have your own baggage. You have your own gloriousness. And with that comes, you're going to apply it in your own way. Things are going to mean different to you, Joe, than they mean to me. And so I call it the big box. I learned this when I took the course at MIT on AI, and they call it the big box syndrome, where words are big box words, and they're all encompassing. Well, I say this a lot in coaching. Well, what does that look like? I don't say, what does that mean? I always say, what does that look like? Because it tends, when you dig down deep, that word, we could use the same word, but it looks like something different to you than it does to me. Good example is dating apps. And everybody uses all the same words. They all want the same things. But it's very, very different when it comes to what that looks like. So the whole idea is that I don't get to live a life that is fulfilling, that is run by somebody else's formula. And so that doesn't mean that I can't use their framework, But I have to know how much of the framework to apply, when it works best to apply it in my life. I don't get to skip the knowing. And the knowing comes from understanding and researching me and spending time with me. And as you've heard me say a lot of times, the knowing a lot of time comes from the gray and being in the hallway. You've heard me say this a couple times in my podcast about sometimes I'm in the hallway and I'm just trying to figure things out. I'm not in any room. I'm not defined yet. It's not figured it out. I haven't figured out what box I belong to today. I'm still in this weird space in the hallway, but that allows me to be in the knowing. And so I really was dealing with that because I so want somebody to give me this script. And I was talking about it with my some people that kind of are my business mentors, and we were laughing because one of them said, Christine, if we gave you the script, you wouldn't follow it anyway. And I was like, well, fuck you. And he was like, no, you would follow parts of it, but you don't have the same exact product that we have. You don't have the same exact approach that we have. You don't have the same exact life that we had when we were starting our businesses. And I thought about that for a minute, and I was like, that's really true. When I lost, I was up to 203 at my heaviest. And I started taking, at that time it was Mounjaro, and I started losing weight. And you're supposed to, when you get on the shot, and a lot of people use different shots, but that's what I took. And you're supposed to, learn to eat better and do all that stuff. Well, of course I didn't. I just lost the weight. And then
control group. I mean, if it's going to work, it's going to work. Right?
Yes, it worked. And I lost the weight, but I didn't change anything. And then I started getting close to my target weight, and I was like, oh my God, I haven't changed my lifestyle. And so I was like, I better figure this shit out. So I hired a nutritionist, a registered dietitian, because I found out that registered dietitians are typically covered. They were covered by my insurance, and a lot of times they are in full. And I hired her, Danielle, and we'll put her link in the podcast and on the website and everything. But I got in there and I started working with her, and I'm so used to working with people that give me a meal plan and that do this and do that and do this, and told me what I couldn't eat. And I remember writing her this big, huge, long letter and going, listen, this is what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to eat healthy food that tastes like shit and blah, 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 blah. And so I met with her, and she was completely laid back, and which balances me out. And I remember the first thing she said was, show me your pantry. And it was right after Thanksgiving. So we had we had hosted Thanksgiving at our house when, the old place where I used to live with my ex. And so we had double stuffed Oreo cookies. And I mean, I had Thanksgiving food, because when people come to Thanksgiving, the way we used to do it was they'd come for 3 or 4 days, and we would have breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, and snacks in between. And so it was just jam full. And it wasn't jam full of healthy foods. It was jam full of lots of good food. And so I was like, oh my God, I can't show you this. And she's like, no, show me it. And so she's like, well, we're going to go through this. We're going to, no. And I was like, you mean to throw it away? She's like, no, you're going to eat through this. I'm not going to have you go out and buy things. And I was like, so mortified. She taught me a lot of different things about, a lot of preconceived notions and beliefs that I had that didn't apply in my life. And so she said, and then as it gets down, we're going to start replacing them with things that you like, that are healthy. But part of my journey with her was learning about what worked and what didn't work for me to eat. So first we tried, because I was not eating because I was on the shot, so I wasn't hungry. So she's like, we got to get you to eat, okay? So let's just worry about that. So we tried the, eat multiple meals a day and snacks and this and that and the other thing. And I just couldn't do it. I mean, I set timers. I set appointment minders on my calendar, and it just wasn't working. So we tried different things. And because at that time I was still working at Deloitte. And so I would literally get up on days that I'd go into the office, I'd be up and I'd be out and I'd be in the office by 7:30. And I would get home and then work till late. Or if I was working at home, which I did most of the time, I literally was up in the office by 7 and didn't come down till like 7:30 or 8 at night. And maybe got up and walked a little bit or something, took a break outside. So it was always one of these things where I had to find out. And what worked for me, I even tried to use this app that literally would tell you, give you red if it was bad for you, green if it was good for you, and yellow if it was okay. And I remember I was so proud of her. And I was like, this is the app I found. And she's like, yeah. And I was like, what? She's like, you can't farm it out. She's like, and again, she was like, you don't know why it's good for you. You don't know why it's bad for you. And she said, if you haven't eaten anything with fat in it all day long, your body needs that. If you haven't eaten anything with this nutrient in it all day long, it needs that. Now, you don't need to eat that all day long. Then it's bad. And so it taught me that I didn't have any context they didn't have any context about my life, about what I'd eaten, what nutrients I had in me, like any of that. It was just giving me this sterile number. Now, that isn't that I can't use it, but again, I have a framework, but I have to apply it to my life. That means I can't farm it out. The other thing she told me was, she says, we've got to figure out what works for you, what you like, because the lifestyle that you have today may change. During busy season, you're working 65 hours a week. And so it's different than when you're not in busy season, or when, and maybe, or it's different when you have kids and they're 2 and 7 versus when you have teenagers versus when they're off to college. Your lifestyle is looking different. So I was like, oh, that means that my eating's going to be different. That means that it's going to be this ebb and flow. That means there's not going to be a constant one thing that fits all forever, and I never have to think about it again. And that's really hard. And I think we've talked about it on here a couple times about what's wrong a lot of times with, sometimes politics, or sometimes, having the hard discussions is we want to farm it out. We want the simple solution, or I do a lot of times, because that requires less of me. It requires less tolerance of myself, less investigation, and surely less tolerance of you. And it's easier, but it's also a hell of a lot less fulfilling.
Yeah, I think we like the formula so much because we like to boil things down to that's good or that's bad.
But I'm going to take you one step farther than that. Why do we do that? Why do we like that so much? Because then I don't have to put any energy into it.
Right.
I don't have to live in the gray. I don't have to be in the hallway. I get to absorb your opinion, your framework, and go, this is it. That's it for me. I'm done. Mm-hmm. I don't have to get outside of my box and go, well, what about this scenario? And what about that scenario? And what about this scenario? I don't have to run those traps, because that's when it gets uncomfortable. And, I used to say in site selection, the thing that companies hated was uncertainty and risk. That was their risk. It's the unknown and the uncertainty. We as people hate that too. And so I will a lot of times, I remember I bought how many exercise tapes? I don't do aerobics. I don't do exercise tapes. I don't. But that's what I've done. I heard this on Instagram the other day, and it was a quote, and I'm going to screw it up, so I'll try and find it so we can find it. But it was, know no person can lead a country if they're not willing to abandon their political party. Didn't say they had to abandon it, but they're not willing to. And it was because a political party is this, you know? It is this. This is what we stand on. And it's like, all right, but in order to lead or in order to be, you have to be able to go, I got to shift from that. I've got to pivot from that. And again, we talked about that. I want this good or bad, black or white. I want it so it is very concrete, decided, and we can move on from that and I never have to revisit it again because that shit sucks. And I talk about it in the sense of fulfillment because relationships. How many times have we seen on the, you know, in the world of influencers and things like that, you've seen, you know, if you do these 5 things in your relationship every day, you've heard me, there's a book that I was reading and it was, I was like, oh, this is kind of, you know, a self-help book, whatever. And, it was good. And I related to some things. And then she's like, yeah, and you need to have sex with your husband. You need to try the 365 sex, you know, sex for 365 every day and I was like, I literally was like, shut the book. Fuck that. There's that fucking happening. Like, I don't know what the fuck you're thinking. And granted, it may have worked for some people. Okay, but it wasn't working in that wasn't my thing. And that didn't mean that I couldn't get the results that I wanted or, you know, but that I wasn't going to do that. And so when I live in the absolute of I have to adopt your program, you know, this is how you make, again, I'm starting my business. So it's like, you know, this is the 6-figure side hustle. You know, this is how you do it. And when I read things like that, I have to sit there and I have to go, is this how I do it? What resonates, what doesn't resonate? Relationships, is this how I do it? Religion. Okay, everybody's, you know, I just said that religion. Is this how I do it? Maybe it is, I don't know.
All right, legends, your morning coffee is sacred. It fuels your badassery. But your mug should do more than hold caffeine. It should hold attitude. Enter the Mugshot Crew. Most days you'll get a text with a fresh mugshot, a quote, a punchline, or a truth bomb that'll either make you snort your latte or remind you that you're a walking powerhouse. Some days, Christine's lucky to find a clean bra, so if you miss one, don't panic. Think of it as a daily pantry essential, a shot of sass with your caffeine. Some days it's inspiration. Fuck fear, sit boldly. Other days it's a brutal truth. Decaf is a crime, and I will press charges. And sometimes it's just a vibe. Living like an HBIC. Look in the mirror. One text, one mugshot, most every day. Because your coffee should hit as hard as your ambitions. Sign up now at ChristineSpratley.com and add some spice to your pantry. One mugshot at a time. The Mugshot Crew. Sipping loud, living proud.
In my very first episode, I think I talked about the idea, and I believe this comes from Atomic Habits, the idea that when you feel something and you go, ooh, it's because you have a belief about something. And it's like, check out what those beliefs are. Is that somebody else's belief? Is that somebody else's formula? You see it all the time in take this real estate class and do these 20 things and this formula. I mean, and that works certain times. And it may work but does it work for me?
Yeah, a lot of that stuff just seems so out of context because they're not filling in the point that you think you've been making very well. The context is completely different. They're like, follow these 6 steps for real estate. Well, you started with $1 million, sir. That's not in my pantry right now.
Yeah. Or again, it's these 6 steps, but do I need all 6 of them? What if you start with 2 million? Do I get to do it different?
Right.
You know, why is this? And again, I want my listeners, I want you guys to think about this. What are you reaching out for to absorb and download? What formulas are you using? And I'll even say this in my experience, and this is just my experience with the 12-step program of AA. was, and they used to say, we don't tell, you don't have to do anything, right? You don't have to do anything, right? Because if it was, then it'd be, we suggest, these are suggested steps. These are suggested ways. Now, granted, they have clubs and things like that. And so but you don't have to do anything. And they were so gracious because there were a lot of times where I didn't do what they suggested and I should have, or I could have. I probably would have had a different outcome, or I didn't do it yet. I did it my way until it became too hard. But again, it's one of those things where I've got to apply it to me so that when my condition changes, when I get a result that I didn't expect, I can understand why I got that result and what I need to do to pivot. One of the things that I was told when I started this was that if I tell people that I don't have their answers, then why will they pay me? Okay? Because you're the expert. And it was like, you got to market and tell yourself. And I'm like, I get that. I get that I don't want to pay you for therapy. If I'm going to a coach, I'll pay a therapist for that. That's licensed and that. But I also don't want to bullshit people and say, this is what your path is, if I haven't even sat down with you and don't know anything about you. And what's interesting is that I've learned as I've done through coaching and different people in different conversations is that there, especially for clients, when I was in my journey, especially at EY and at Big Four or at EY and Deloitte, clients that I love to work with were clients that you would go, I don't have that answer yet. Let me know more about you. Let me know more about this, and then I can figure this out. Clients that, because they were the ones that understood when I wanted to tweak something, they were like, yeah, that fits. And this is why it fits. Because you customized this, and we did a lot of the framework and everything, but that's when it's good. There's never two projects that are the exact same. They may have the same jobs, they may have the same investment, they may have but they're never the exact same. There's always some tweak about them. And I think it's very interesting, and I want my audience to think about this. What are you trying to outsource? What part of your life are you trying to outsource? And I am the queen of outsourcing. I like to outsource that stuff. But what I've realized is that I need to do a lot of the work. If I'm going to outsource it, I need to do the work to make and research, is this who I outsource it to? Is this the formula that works? Is this where, and again, there's two different parts of the work. There's the execution, which people go, I'm doing the work. I'll implement these steps, or I'll do these 5 things of this formula to do this rich. And they're wondering why it doesn't work. It's because the first part of the work, which is the knowing and the research and the understanding of self, does that even apply? I have to admit that I got into what I did because I needed a job. And then I stayed there because I was good at it. And then I wondered why I was no longer fulfilled when the money was, after a while, it was like the money wasn't, that was great, but okay. And it was because I never did the research as to, what makes you fulfilled? What do you like? And what I've learned is that there's lots of things about that industry that I love doing, but I don't love doing those. I love doing those types of thinking and problem solving. And that's what fulfills me. I love going through the maze and the puzzle and working with people and, doing those things. That can be taken into a lot of different arenas. My technical expertise was in that particular industry. But the fact of the things that I love, now I get to do those things with people. I get to do it with speaking, and I get to do it with coaching. So I can't outsource that. One size does not fit all. And this is about having your agency, your autonomy. And when I outsource, just by default, I give that autonomy away. And a lot of times I didn't even know that I had done that by default. You know, a lot of times I didn't realize that society had put me in this box, and so I just kind of grew up in this box. I didn't realize the impact my family and religion and all of those things had on me, and so they weren't my choices. And then when I got to a point where I just could choose, I was like, well, yeah, those are my choices, but I never really sat there and did that time and spent that because it was easier than looking at it and going, do I still want this? Do I still want this? Is this still working for me? I am just amazed at, I had a friend when I was in Dallas, and she was a nanny. We were both nannies, and she was from Sweden. Her name was Camilla, and she was in a relationship, even though she was over in the States. And they're still together, and they've never been married. Never been married. They've raised kids. They've raised family. Never been married. Now, you know, everybody that's, you know, got their own opinions about that, you got a belief about it. But I'll tell you what, they've chosen that relationship every single day. Those kids are amazing. And it's like, again, that was the choice. They re-examined this because there wasn't this thing that said, you have to do this. And I'm not saying that works for everybody. Again, that's not saying that. But I'm saying, why am I still choosing this? Or am I still choosing it? Am I choosing it because someone told me I had to? Because it's what I've committed to? Or have I woken up and said, no, I'm committing to this again today? I'm committing to working on my business. I'm committing to looking at who I am today, and am I fulfilled? Does what fulfill me? You know, what is it that you can't eat enough to sustain you through today? Eventually, if you don't look at it and feed yourself, and I can't live off of yesterday's meal. And I think that the trap is common opinion and common belief of it's going to be easier if I just go along, if it is just black and white. But how much of it is really black and white? Until we get out to the extremes. Then they're pretty, but when you want to get in, so if we're on the both sides of the extremes of whatever, and we've got all this way in here to get to the middle, right? That means there's all of these other points of views and all of this gray and this, you know, there's all these other shades. I mean, go stand in Sherwin-Williams paint department and look at that stuff. There's all these other colors. You know, it reminds me of Talladega Nights. You're the first or you're last. It's like, well, no, there's everything in between. And I'm not going to go into the why do you, the listener, want it black or white right now. Why I'm not going to go into all of that. That's for you and your time. But look at your life. What are you outsourcing? What have you boiled down to a single line or phrase? And where this started getting me was, one, I'm dealing it with some of the people that I'm working with, but two, I was talking with a business mentor and she asked me, she said, how does it feel? Because I came up on my 1-year anniversary since I left corporate. She said, how do you feel? You know, where are you at? And I'm like, I'm still confused. I'm still in the hallway. I said, you know, there are things that I thought I knew that are now changing. And there's some things that I kind of got that I know now. And she said, well, do you want to go back? And I said, no. And so what I've learned is that being in the gray, being in the hallway, walking my own path, sometimes skipping, running, jumping, singing, sometimes crawling on my knees, crying. But doing that is better than where I was. And I think to your point of we like to get to the yes or the no, the black or the white, the good or the bad, that is because I don't think I can tolerate the space in between.
Yeah. And I think we overvalue other people. Like you're saying, we want other people to tell us what's right and wrong for us or good or bad. But the challenge is it's just not that simple. Like you're different. Like you're saying, like something might be good for me and bad for you. Might be bad for you, might be good for me.
And I would even take a step back from that in that that's not their job.
Right.
That's my job. My job my job is to grow the fuck up. I am supposed to I am the human I'm supposed to raise. I am supposed to make these decisions for myself and use frameworks and guidelines that align with me and make sense to me. That's not someone else's job. It's my job to go, yeah, this aligns, and this is what I think is good, or this is that I think is bad, or this is what I do, and this is what I don't do. This is what fulfills me, and this is why. So much of dealing with the whole idea of fulfillment around people is getting them to ask that next question. We talked about it with the advice monsters and, and what else? And what else? So today, what I'd like you to do is just, first of all, one, think about you, just like you as far as autonomy, like you yourself, your history, your past, your future, like all of those things, your environment, and how unique and wonderful that is. And then take a moment and go, what am I giving up autonomy on? What am I outsourcing? And if you want to, you can look at the next question, which is, what am I without that? Maybe you still end up at that same point. Maybe that 7-step process is still the step process that you do. Maybe the beliefs that you hold are still the same. Maybe they're not. But it'll mean more to you than someone else. When you switch the light bulb on in your life, it means more than when someone else does it. Because then you always have access to that light. You always have that knowledge in you. If I am always giving out to everything else and waiting for someone else to give me the answers, then I have to wait for someone else to give me my happiness, my fulfillment, all of those things. And again, I think that is the job we are here to do, is to live and to grow up. And that is my job. And that doesn't mean that I don't have a framework that people work through with fuck fear. And that doesn't mean that I don't guide people through things. And that doesn't mean that you can't. I mean, you all have hacks about your life, but that's why we get a pantry. That's why we put them all in there. And then today we go, ooh, I'm going to use this trick, and I'm going to use that trick, and I'm going to use 5 cups of this and 10 gallons of that. And then I may go, ooh, I used that last time and it sucked, so I'm going to use a teaspoon. Or I didn't like the taste at all, so I'm going to kick that puppy out. But I'm going to leave it on there. I'm going to leave it in the pantry because maybe in 10 years I'll use it. I don't know. No one else can live your life. That's what I had to. And no one, Pink says it in her song. All I know so far, People act like they know, but they don't. And that's the beauty, is that we get to know ourselves. We get to know our relationships. That's what makes them matter. So you are enough. You are worth finding out and knowing about yourself. And no one is worth giving up your autonomy for. Because that is the precious thing that you are. That's what you have. So today, ladies and gentlemen, think about it. There's no shortcuts. It's your own recipe. And that's what makes it taste so good. Until next time, Tubbs.
Thanks for tuning in to Fear with Christine Spratley. Living like a head in charge. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, tell her what topics you want to hear, and share this episode with someone who could use a pantry full of boldness in their life. Remember, life isn't about aging with grace. It's about aging with mischief, audacity, and having a damn good story to tell. So show up, take action, and keep saying fear.